Radio Free Palmer 89.5 KVRF presents Mushing Radio, hosted by Robert Forto. Mushing Radio is about dog-powered sports, living in the Great White North, and mushing. Visit our website at mushingradio.com. Here is your host, Robert Forto.
Hello and welcome, everybody. This is Robert Forto, and you're listening to Mushing Radio here on KVRF 89.7 in the Matsu Valley. RadioFreePalmer.org is our live streaming site, and you can find all of our episodes over on dogworksradio.com. Be sure to check us out on social media by searching Dogworks Radio, and be sure to hit that subscribe button wherever you're listening to this podcast, and you will get updates on whenever we drop an episode. And this is going to be one that you want to listen to. We have a special series starting. We're going to be interviewing the Randalls. They are Rock On Racing. They're a brand new mushing kennel up here in Alaska. And when I say everybody in the family is involved, everybody's involved. This family of four has all done a race this year. It's their first year, and we're looking very much forward to this. Tonight, we're talking to Casey Randall, the mom of the group. Casey, how's it going?
It's going great, Robert. I'm having a great day. How are you?
Everything is great. It's looking a lot like spring here in Alaska. Mushing season for the year is winding down. And boy, you guys had a crazy first year, didn't you?
We have. It's gone by so fast, and I can't believe that the snow is starting to melt. But we sure have had a very fun, a successful year, and it gets us excited already thinking about next year.
Yeah. For folks that are up in the Alaskan mushing community, you guys are very well known. You've helped out for years at local races. You, your husband, and your kids have spent a lot of time on the other side of mushing, you know, the handling side and all of that. But this year, you're really taking the bull by the horns, and that's what we're going to get into tonight. But before we do all that, Casey, can you just introduce yourself and tell us about who you are and what you're all about, please?
Well, I'm Casey Randall, and I've been up in Alaska now. This will be my 21st year. I can't believe it. I came up here 21 years ago to go to graduate school. I went to Alaska Pacific University, and I got a degree in psychology. I was a clinician here for years, and always thought, the story where people would only be here for a few years, but ended up staying, and we love Alaska. So I now, I'm not practicing anymore, but I'm home with my two kids, and we homeschool. So, and of course now we took on owning dogs. So that has really taken over our life in a very positive way.
Yeah, and you and I have known each other for, at least 7-8 years now. And I remember seeing you guys talk about one day owning dogs, and, maybe we'll just get 2 or 3 here or there, but you guys really jumped into it, and you have a whole gaggle of dogs. As I mentioned before, everyone in the family has done at least one race this year. You did an Iditarod qualifier, the Willow 300, which we're going to talk about in just a bit. But can we start, Casey, and hear about how you acquired that first group of dogs and where they stay? And I have a bunch of questions in regard to that.
Well, like you said, we have been around mushing for years. We've always been fans, and then, 5 years ago or so, we started helping handling, started volunteering at races, and, we knew eventually we would have dogs, and, you never know when the right time is. And last year, I guess it was right after Iditarod, we had worked with some dogs from your Olsom's kennel, and because Robert Forto had leased some dogs for him for the year. So we got to know 6 of his dogs. And then after we went back to yours kennel, he knew we loved them. He knew we wanted to dive into the world of mushing. But we thought, you know what, we're not going to do it this year. Well, lo and behold, yours says, hey, I have this group of dogs that would be great for you guys. So, we said, well, let's just do it. And we ended up buying 6 dogs from him and Joran Margot Olsson. And then a few days later, he let us know, well, I have a 7th son. And we thought, no, we've got enough. We're going to start with a 6th. But our kids had different plans, and they actually ran upstairs and pooled their money together. And so we knew they were serious, and they bought the 7th dog. And so that's what started it all. We brought home 7 dogs from their kennel, but we don't have a place to put those dogs. And so Robert and Joan Bunsen, who are absolute angels and huge supporters, and we can never thank them enough, but the dogs started out, and they are still housed at their kennel.
And for folks in terms of geography, I know that you have a very interesting story to tell us about how long it takes to go from your place to do all of the chores and then go back. And you guys do this every single day. How far is that, and how long does it take you?
Well, and it depends on, winter or summer, but I think the quickest we've ever gotten from our house over to the Bunsen kennel is like 35 minutes. Sometimes in the winter, it can take us, 45 to an hour, just depending on conditions. And that's just to get there. And so right away, everyone's probably thinking we're crazy, and we are, because, we're a family that has to dedicate a ton of travel time. But we obviously love our time with the dogs. And so we just, said we're gonna push through it this year. But then you can't run out of Bunsen's kennel because it's in Anchorage, and so then we have to load up dogs, and then we have to take them. We did a lot of fall training out at Chugiak, and then when it's been a great snow year, and so we were able to do a lot of our mushing at Tozier. That's right in town. They have amazing trails for being right in the city of Anchorage. But quite honestly, it can take us 4 to 5 hours before we actually have the dogs hooked up and can say hike and go mushing. So when we mush, it's pretty much all day long. This whole thing takes, because then we repeat it after we, take the dogs back and then get home.
Yeah, that is a big chore in of itself. And that situation that you do with the Bunsens is rather common, especially for folks that are just getting involved with mushing, or they only have a few dogs. They often either lease the space from another musher, or they trade their time for those spots. Is that a similar situation to what you guys are doing?
Yeah, well, and like I said, Robert and Joan are just amazing, and we've been able to keep our dogs there. He has some dogs that joined our team to make a full team. We actually ended up buying more dogs from Joran Margot, and what's really funny is we just got 4 more today. So we actually have 12 dogs from the Sevo Racing kennel. We love them all so much, but we help take care of Bunsen's kennel, and it's just been a great situation. We've been very blessed, and we've learned from Robert. He's he's a veteran. I did ride Musher, and we built some dog boxes, and we combined his old boxes, and so it's been we call our dogs the rock stars, and his dogs are the Bunsen burners. So it was a rock star burner combination this year for our races.
That's very cool. Casey, I don't know if it was Matt or the kids that said on their interview, and these are all going to air sequentially, starting this week with Casey first, then Matt, and then the 2 kids are going to be combined on the 3rd episode. They said something to the effect that you guys did about 2,000 miles of training this year. Is that right?
Yeah, I haven't added it up in the last week or two here, but when I last added it up, we were over 2,500 miles for all the training we've done, including races. And our children, who they just turned 12 years old and 10 years old, and with the exception of Matt's Copper Basin race and my Willow 300 race, they have done on almost every mile of that training. So, of course, it started with 4-wheelers in the fall. And we'd have the whole family on a 4-wheeler. 4 of us on a 4-wheeler with 16 dogs. And then, of course, the kids and I did a lot of training when Matt would be at work. And then when we got to switch to sleds, I would take 6 dogs or 8 dogs. Addie Ann would take like 4 or 6. Phil would take 2 or 3. And, those kids are mushing 50 and 100-mile 100 miles at a time. And we don't know any different. We've just been doing it as a family, and we have loved many minutes of it.
Right. Yeah. And that's a great way to learn by, they say trial by fire. That's a great way to learn, especially for the youngsters there. That time on the runners is invaluable, and I'm sure that you can attest to that as well. And we're going to talk about your time on the runners on the Willow 300 in just a minute. But I have to ask, Casey, we had mentioned at the top of the show that you've been around mushing for a long time, but you haven't spent a lot of time on the runners until you got these dogs. So my first question in regard to that is, what is one thing that really surprised you from what you're used to doing compared to what you weren't sure was going to happen? What was that biggest surprise once you started running your own dogs and doing things on your own?
Well, it's just amazing to have your own dogs. We fall in love with so many dogs that we meet, but then when you realize that you're working as a team, I think that's just the neatest thing for me is to, we're mushing along and, you'll go like, around a corner and you see your whole team and they just look so awesome and beautiful and when they're all working together. So I guess I wasn't, prepared for that just amazing feeling of you guys all working together. But also, we learn something new every time we go out to mush.
That's awesome. So let's jump over to the racing. You had mentioned that your husband, Matt, ran the Copper Basin, and that's one of the first 300 milers of the season. It's held in January, and then the Willow 300 is held the first weekend, I believe, in February. How did you guys decide on who was going to do what? And of course, was there a preference to either one of you about which one you wanted to do?
Well, we were just so excited about all the races. Like I said, we've handled one. We know many of the mushers, and then it was pretty surreal to realize that we were going to be the mushers. And so we looked at all the races and tried to figure out what would work with our schedule. And I decided that Matt would do the Copper Basin and I would do the Willow. And it was wonderful that he did the Copper because I learned a lot from him saying, okay, when I got to that first checkpoint, he tried to be prepared, but then he learned just as he went, and then he could bring all that knowledge back to me. And we actually sat down. I made him write it out, and it was just like studying for a quiz. We would go over it quite a few nights before the Willow so that I could remember which steps to do so that I could be more efficient at checkpoints. I'm sure I'm not the only one that's ever done that, but it really helped to go over it.
That's a great point. And as you know, Casey, a lot of people that listen to this show are not dog mushers. They just love, the sport of mushing or dogs in general. Can you tell us a bit about that list? What are some of the things that you got to make sure that are taken care of? I'm sure most people understand, hey, you got to feed the dogs and you got to feed yourself, but there's a few other things that have to happen at every checkpoint that you can't miss, isn't there?
Right. Well, and then, everybody has their own routines, and I'm sure that as we, go forth, we will be like, oh, remember when we used to do this, and now we do this different. But, there were things like, okay, trying to remember, okay, when I pull in, you can have, there's people there, your handlers are there to hold the team for a minute. And so, it's like, okay, I'm going to get my snacks out. I'm going to have them right where I can grab them quickly and give them to each dog down the line because, they're ready to eat them at that moment. And then, I'm going to get them secured, and then I'm gonna make sure I get their, I wanted to be efficient going up and down the line, not walk just and not do something. So we had that where you take the booties off and then come back, and of course you have to get your cooker going, and then while the water is heating up, you can go and get the team where the straw is out. And I think I did the straw first. I'm kind of forgetting now because it's been a little bit. But the routine was great because it gave me confidence to pull into the checkpoint and get that kind of stuff done. And then, of course, we have our drop bags that are a drop bag is a bag that's already been packed, and it has human stuff in there, things I needed to eat and drink, and some gear like extra socks so that I could change my socks or get new hand warmers, things like that. And then, of course, it had all the food and snacks for the dogs. And then I also had coats and blankets for the dogs. But you got to go through all that stuff, and the better prepared it was, especially when you're sleep deprived, which I learned all about that on the Willow too. It's definitely different than being a handler and being sleep deprived and being the musher being sleep deprived. But having it organized is a huge help.
And I understand that you got lost, and we're going to talk about that coming up here in just a sec. But I have to ask, because every musher has something special that they put in their bag, whether it be a snack or something. Since this is really your first big race, did you pack something special that you knew that you would just look forward to, or you couldn't live without personally, not necessarily for the dogs?
Well, you know what was special, and I actually didn't pack it myself, but our kids did this for both my husband and my race. They made little notes, and they tucked them into the drop bag so that when we would open our drop bag, we would be able to get those out and read them, and it just something that brought a smile to your face, and so we really appreciated those.
That's a cool story. So let's talk about, Casey, this is a 300-mile race. It's an Iditarod qualifier. For folks that are listening, in order to qualify for Iditarod, you have to do two 300-mile races, and then either a 200 or a 150-miler before you're quote-unquote qualified and ready to go. And you did this one as a qualifier, meaning you could not have any outside help, meaning people couldn't help you feed the dogs or take off the booties or whatever. But it's my understanding, I know you've said this before, that everything was going great until you got lost. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I guess it was like my third run, and actually I was having a great race. I mean, the whole thing ended up being a great race, but going along, and I wear glasses, and so I really need to get some contacts, I think, because the glasses fog up, and they do cause some problems. You can't see as well. And anyway, we were going along, and I knew there was a road crossing coming up, so I was looking for it. And I had an awesome lead dog. His name is Raven, and he will just pick the trail. He's from Nick Petit. He let us have this dog, and Raven has just been amazing. But Raven he picked the right way, but I had foggy glasses, and I thought we needed to go the other way. And as soon as I told him G, he just did it right on command because he's awesome like that. And off we went down a trail that actually had the X's on each side, but I thought they were the markers because my glasses were fogged up. And so we were going along, and we went along, and we needed to turn around. And so, it's not always easy to turn your team around, but I've had to do it a few times in practice. So those are all the things that happen when you're practicing come to help you if you need to do them in races. So I undid all the tugs, which are the line that is clipped to the gang line that helps the dogs, or what the dogs pull from. Unclipped those so that it's easier to turn them around, and then we got back on track. But it definitely cost me some time. But it was good. We were able to get ourselves out of that situation and back on the right trail.
So with that, Casey, how far or how long were you on the wrong trail?
I guess I don't know the exact miles, but everyone was joking that I did the Willow 310 instead of the Willow 300. So I don't know, maybe I went 5 miles both ways out of the way there. But I was happy to be back on the right trail.
So about an hour then at a normal speed, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. So let's jump over to the family mushing that you guys are doing. As we mentioned, everybody is doing this. How hard, and I know you have a story that you told earlier about the kids running upstairs and getting their money to pay for the 7th dog. How hard was it to convince everybody, hey, we're going to do this. We're going to do this year. We're not waiting any longer. Let's jump on this opportunity and do it now.
Well, it wasn't hard to convince the kids because they've been trying to convince us for a number of years. and as children, they don't understand the time that it's going to take to do all of this. And we didn't understand the time it's going to take to do all this, but we definitely talked as a family and said, we're going to be committed to this. And, we also live we've been building our home around us for a while, and that's a whole other story in itself, but we live off grid, and we have, that's a lot of work too. And so we knew that, okay, finishing our house is going to be put on hold while we take this new adventure with dogs. So, it helps to be all in as a family, and the fact that we're all doing it together, these are our adventures. This is what we spend our money on. This is what we spend our time on, and doing it together is what makes it just, these awesome journeys that we take together.
Right. And I think that you and I have talked about this before, and it's a very important question that people are interested in the answer to. You had mentioned that this was your adventure and this is what you spend your money on, but this is a very expensive venture for dog food and travel and time and everything else. How did you guys figure that out, from going from absolute zero dog expense to a major expense in just, in a matter of days? How did you guys work that out financially and realized this is something we want to do? Because, I say all the time, if I didn't do sled dogs, I could have a big boat or a plane or vacation all the time or whatever. How did you guys talk about that?
Think it might be crazy to spend so much money on dogs, and everybody chooses what they spend their money on, and we definitely had to refocus. We know that we have to buy dog food every month. We know that there's going to be medical expenses. Travel expenses are huge. We're very lucky to have found some gear that people have let us borrow. Or we've been able to get good deals on used sled. Robert Bunsen and Joan Bunsen, we have a lot of their stuff that he's had over the years. So, donations help. We have some wonderful people who have wanted to give to us. But yeah, we knew that there was going to be other things we couldn't do because we decided to go into this. To these dog adventures. So I think it's just choosing that and then trying to stay on the right path, and then also trying to be realistic about it. Even just traveling for races is really expensive, and so there's some things you can't do it all, or we can't do it all yet. But we'd like to continue it, and we'd like to find other ways to sustain what we're doing and share it with people. People want to take dog sled rides. They want to learn about mushing, and that can be one way that we could maybe get more donations for our kennel.
Casey, we have just a few minutes left, and I have a couple of more segments that I would like to talk to you about. The next one is Rock On Racing. Is that based on what you said earlier, that these guys are your rock stars? Is that how you guys came up with the name?
Yeah, we just, like, what do you name your kennel? And, it just sounded fun, like Rock On Racing. And, people will see us and they yell rock on, and that's a lot of fun. It's touchy and it makes you smile. And then, we were like, well, our dogs, they're rock stars. Well, great, we're going to call them rock stars. And then we just had 7 puppies in December, and they're all named after rock. So that was a fun litter to start off with. But that was just how we came up with the name, and so far it's going over well.
Yeah, for sure. Casey, you had mentioned that you got all of these guys pretty much at the same time, and this question is tough for anybody that I ask, but I have to know. Tell us one of your favorite dogs and a very quick story about them. You talked about Raven and being a leader, but all of these guys have their own individual personalities. They all have their own quirks, and they of course all tug at our hearts. But tell us one dog and a quick.
Scorpa, and Scorpa actually came from Norway. He was with Robert Forto's kennel, and then Yor bought him, and then Scorpa actually won the Iditarod with Yor in I think it was 2019. But I was on a training run one time, and there was a tree that had fallen down, and the dog was taking that trail, and they started to go down it, and then the tree was there, and so it blocked us, and we just instantly had a big tangle. And of course I'm new at this, and so I'm like, oh no, this is okay, I gotta figure this out. So I got everybody untangled, but I was hooking the dogs all back up in their places, and I could not find a dog to hold the line out. And I kind of was talking out loud, and I was like, I just need one of you guys to hold this line out. And lo and behold, I kid you not, I mean, these are just amazing stories that happen, and you just bond with those dogs so quickly. But Papa, he just walked right up, and he just stood there like, I'll do it. And, I couldn't even believe it. And I hooked him up. He held the line out. I got all the dogs hooked back up, and, we trotted back in for our first 40-mile training run there. But I still can't believe he did that. But he knew exactly what I needed at that moment. And they're amazing.
Having a trained dog on a team really helps, doesn't it?
It does. And we're blessed because, we're the weak link. We're the new Mushers, and we're really fortunate to have a bunch of dogs that know what they're doing, and they're teaching us so much. So we're really humbled to be the Musher with these.
On our show, and that is, if a person's just getting involved in the sport and they don't know whether they want to do dry land or sprint mushing or Iditarod someday, folks very much where you guys were last year, and they came to you, Casey, and asked for one piece of advice, what would that one piece of advice be?
Well, I think what really helped us was to just get involved. Go volunteer, go watch a race, but then go further, ask how you can help, work at a checkpoint, find a musher and help handle. Everyone's always happy to have someone who wants to, scoop the poop, help pull the dog. And, once you see what's going on, then you get an idea of what you want to do. Because, whether it's sprint mushing or distance mushing or, canicross, it's all awesome dog sports. But to see it firsthand like that, and then you make connections. And the mushing community is very welcoming and very helpful, especially for someone who wants to come work hard.
Very good. And lastly, Casey, before...
So I will post links to that. Drop us a line and, come out to races and cheer us on.
And are you guys on Twitter and Instagram as well?
We aren't yet. Maybe we'll do that soon, but we are on Facebook.
Very good. And we'll share links to that as we're going. So with that, as I mentioned, we're talking to Casey Randall. She is the mom of the Rock On Racing crew. And coming up next week is Matt Randall, the dad of the crew. And then the following week are the two kids, Addie Ann and Thale, and every one of them have very interesting stories to share. And I thought it would be a cool way to sort of end this crazy mushing season that we've all had with COVID and pandemics and races being canceled and tons of snow and all of that. It's been a year to remember for everyone in the community, but I'm sure for this family who's just getting involved with the sport. Casey, thank you very much for joining us tonight, and we'll talk again soon, okay?
Well, thank you for having me and talking to my family, and just very proud of everybody, and we're excited for the future.
Very good. Casey Randall, Rock On Racing, and this is Robert Forto for Mushing Radio. We'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.
Radio Free Palmer 89.5 KVRF presents Mushing Radio, hosted by Robert Forto. Mushing Radio is about dog-powered sports, living in the Great White North, and mushing. Visit our website at mushingradio.com. Here is your host, Robert Forto.